Hello again and welcome to another episode of Roshamjoe Paints. As always, I'm Joe and today I'm going to be painting the Bladeguard Ancient, who is the standard bearer for what will be my Primaris Fulminator army. A little bit of extra white on the guy, a little bit of details here and there, and basically I want to get back into my comfort zone. The Necrons were fun to paint for a little bit, but I want to take a break, paint something that's simple, so I didn't. But should be a lot of fun. I'm going to attempt to do a little bit of extra difference between the metal white and the what will be the tabard white. So, a difference between the cloth and whatnot. Hopefully, it turns out really good. If not, I bet we'll have a lot of fun doing it. And that being said, let's go ahead and get rolling. So here we have the Bladeguard Ancient that we will be painting today. I'm a big fan of this model, and I am also not a fan of this model at the same time. The reason being, while these cloaks, the bottom cloak here is not attached, so you don't have to worry about shimming down any sort of seams to make it really nice and clean. Or not shimming, but shaving, that is. You can also see detail through here, which means I'm going to have to spray in and paint. Also, same thing under here, I'm going to have to get in there and paint. Shouldn't be too difficult though overall. Let me do a quick comparison to the old Ancient, and this is just the Primaris Ancient versus the Bladeguard Ancient. A lot different look. We have very just plain Primaris armor over here, as well as a very plain yet not plain. It's very what do you call it? Like an open book. You could do whatever you wanted to, and I just kind of kept it simple. Tried to do whatever I could to make it look nice. But overall, not a lot of decorations, very just kind of run of the mill. Now, the new one obviously has, he's got a halo, he's got this shield up front, he's carrying a skeleton hand, he's got all kinds of decorations up on the front here, and oh yeah, there's like an entire skeleton that he's carrying around, who also appears to have some metal on his face, so a lot of different details on here. Overall, getting off the sprue was easy. There was one thing I ran into, and I don't know if you can see it very well, but on this side, there's this nice little 1, 2, 3 kind of spikes coming off. On this side, there is 1, 2. The reason that this third one is kind of shaved down is that 2 of the points that meet up with the sprue are 1 and 2 right there. And as I was cutting those off, I cut them further away so that I could come in and be really, really, really precise and delicate with an X-Acto knife. And I precisely and delicately cut half of that thing off with a sharp knife. So I think I have a purity seal that I'm going to end up, since he's already got a couple other ones here, I'm just going to slap a purity seal up there and try to hide my shame. But other than that, like I like the look of this model. As far as the rule set goes, he's got, I think he's got a heavy pistol, which might be a little bit better, might not, I don't know. But overall, this guy's here for buffing and not damage. Crack grenades, frag grenades. So he's got a blast weapon. But overall, he's there to buff other people around him, and the way that he does that is within 6 inches, any unit within 6 inches will get +1 to their hit rolls, which is both for the melee hit as well as the ballistic skill. So that is a plus in my mind, as well as increasing leadership by 1 for anyone within range. And on when a model is killed, you roll a d6 for every model that's killed, and if you roll I think it's a 4, 5, or 6, so 4+ on a d6, learning the terminology here, on that, you get to make an attack with your either ranged weapon or your melee weapon before you actually remove the model from the table, after, I think, the end of that, whatever phase that it was killed in, something along those lines. It's in the rule book, you can find it out. So, all that aside, size comparison, look comparison, and rules out of the way, let's talk about how this thing goes together. And it's actually quite simple. So it's one piece here, which is a peg that goes through into the back here, like it sticks into this back right about there and holds the front on, but it's still together, obviously. So what happens next is you wiggle this backpack free, and like so many Jenga games I've lost, everything just kind of falls apart. So this piece actually goes through and here, and it sandwiches everything together. So you can imagine there's something else there, and that's how it's held together. The lines are actually pretty good because, again, you hide these mold lines, or not mold lines, you hide these lines with the arm, and you know, this one is the connectivity line is hidden by this this part of the robe, as well as the armpit. Not a huge fan of the upper cloth. I think I could have gotten away with just the lower half of the just a kilt on the bottom with all the decoration down there. But we're going to try to make the cloth look very much like cloth, and even though it's going to be white, I'm going to try to make it look like a different texture, but we'll see how good I actually do that. Different texture than the armor that is white. Also, like I was saying, I think earlier, you know, 3 minutes ago when I started this, the legs here you can see. Now the nice part is, because the whole back piece comes off, I can just spray in here, and I'm not going to paint as far as the I'm not going to get that crazy as far as to do the, oh, maybe I will. Oh my gosh, you can kind of see it. I won't detail it. How about I paint it, but I won't detail it. Just that front part there. But I'll be able to do, you know, a couple little edge highlights in here just to make it look clean enough so that when this goes on to cover it up and you never see it again, at least we'll know it matched. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and spray this with some Macragge blue, and then we will start. Oh wait, actually, let me show you one more thing on the helm. Helm has this halo compared to the other guy. The other ancient helmet was just pure white, which I might do again because I don't mind it. I think it looks pretty cool. However, I do think something I thought about doing was making the halo is going to be gold. And I believe this face shield I'm going to make white. I was thinking I could try putting blue on the top portion and then like white in the very center. We'll see. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spray it blue, and then I will go back and paint just those portions white later on. And if I like the look, then I'll do the extra layers, the highlighting, all the extra stuff. If I don't like the look, then I'll just slap on more white and we'll move on with life. So in order to appease some of my minor OCD, I am now going to finish painting up the inside. Now again, this is a part where you may not even see it. You can tell I already started painting some Xandry Dust on the cloak, but I'll do another more official step of that. But this is just some Eshin Gray, and anyone knows, or anyone who's watched more than a couple of my videos knows that I don't like Eshin Gray on Necrons, and it's because it's just used as an edge highlight. The way that I do Eshin Gray on my Space Marine, the Fulminators here, is actually on any Space Marine for the most part that I'm painting in this scheme here, is I like to paint it on nice and thin, get a good little coat here, and then I just slap some Gnome oil on it, and then I be done with it. So that is what I'm going to do here, with the additional care taken to add a little bit of Dawnstone, because while you can't see them, you know, that'll make them that much cooler when they actually show up. So there's a total of, I'm not going to count, but there are the backs of the hands, like the palms, and of course in the joints of the elbow on this one arm in particular. I went around the base of the head, even though I can guarantee that that's not going to be seen. And then there's a couple spots on this one I like to paint in the focus. These little, what are they? I don't even know what they're called, but these little, they're like straps that go to the front. So I painted those, as well as, you know, in, again, glove, arm joints. And then I made sure to go back on this one, and here is the other part of that, that strap. There's also a little bit seen here and in the front. So I'm going to hit all of those areas. Oh wait, I already did. So I've hit all of those areas, that is. And what I want to do is I want to go back with the Gnome oil, and I'm going to fill in just a little bit of a shade on it. I'm going to go do my second coat here. Do a shade on it, and then I'm also going to do, at the same time, my my targeted highlights for all of the Macragge blue. So instead of just doing a giant wash over the entire model, I'm going to do, you know, intentional specific spots. Now, I have get out of here. I have Macragge blue out already because I want to be able to clean up stuff like this so that once I'm done with it, I just don't ever have to look at it again, except for the couple of times that I see it. Now let me show you how much of, how kind of ridiculous this is, so you can decide whether you want to do this step for yourself. So once this is on, that's what you're going to see. Just that little part, those little parts right there. You know, same thing over here. I don't even know if you see any over here. No, you won't see anything over here. And again, that in the front there, you might, holding it at a particular angle, you might see a little bit of that Xandry Dust of the tabard or the cloak, whatever this is going to end up being called. So do with it what you will. I'm going to paint it. I'm not going to highlight it. I'm just going to make sure it's got paint on it versus blue. But yeah, I am going to go back and I am going to edge highlight in here, and I am going to do all those fun things, and you'll get to see it. So going right into the Gnome Oil Stage, we are going to take the Gnome Oil and drop it everywhere, all over the Eshin Gray that we just painted in the last stage, to make sure that it gets a nice highlight. And what that does is it sinks into the crevices and makes it appear as if you painted it black, and now it just has raised lines of Gnome Oil. And again, because there's not a lot of it, and because this is a character, and I'm going to try to be a little bit extra detailed with this one, I'm probably going to end up trying to pick out a little bit of the Dawnstone as well when I go through here. So that'll be interesting to see how I do trying to, edge highlight. You watch the next time I do a character, I'll be like, okay, so put the Dawnstone over the soft joints and then wash over the Dawnstone with Gnome Oil a bunch of times. So while I totally said that I would do Dawnstone with Gnome Oil in jest, check this out. This is Abaddon Black covered in Eshin Gray, and then, edge highlighted with Eshin Gray and then edge highlighted again with Dawnstone. This side of the arm up here is Eshin Gray covered in Gnome Oil and highlighted with Dawnstone, and this right here is Dawnstone covered in Gnome Oil, and that's it. Realistically, I mean, pick your poison. They all work pretty well. The Dawnstone one, you can tell, is dull. I kind of like the Eshin Gray the most, but I mean, realistically, like if you're just going for speed, I don't see why you wouldn't choose that option. Other than the fact that Dawnstone is a thin paint, but you got other options. So there you go. So who knows? So aside from doing that, and I might as well do the last. Okay, so I came back and I did a couple things, and one was I did silver in here so that when I started the highlights of Caliban Blue, the heck is it called? Kalgar Blue? Kalgar Blue. It's Caliban Green, Kalgar Blue. There we go. All right, so I came back in here with Kalgar Blue just to start on some of the highlights to show you what it would look like and to skip that entire step. I noticed now that I ended up hitting this, so I got to clean that up, but also did the Dawnstone highlights on the arm pieces, so everything here is done. Same thing, I'm going to do the backpack later because I'm going to add all the silvers and all the whites before I start throwing Gnome Oil on that. This guy's done, but again, you're not going to see any of that. And then, of course, Kalgar Blue, as well as the Dawnstone highlights on this are complete. So let me show you what all that takes. Now, this is probably the coolest part right here because, again, I've done all the highlights on this side, none of the highlights on that side. So you could see what the Dawnstone versus just having Eshin Gray and Gnome Oil looks like. But, because we want to make sure that this looks as good as possible before we cover it up and can no longer see it, we're going to go ahead and get ourselves zoomed in. And we're going to cover just an edge highlight of Dawnstone on all these ribs in the soft armor. So I will continue that when I have a better angle of it, but you get the idea. I'm just using a thin down version of, just a thin down paint, Dawnstone. Very little bit on my brush. You can actually, if you have a fine enough point to your brush, you can also just, use it, again, kind of like a pencil, and do that. If you make any mistakes and you end up going in between the lines like that, let me just perfectly go in between the line. A thin down Abaddon Black will go in here and make enough of a cover up for that mistake without without standing out too much, as opposed to just the Xandry and Gnome Oil. Now, do the same thing with all of your Kalgar blues. You know, you come in here, you can edge highlight this, the hard edges like this. Give yourself, nope, there you go. Give yourself the angle to work with, and again, clean up with Macragge blue in case you do anything like that. This is the, you know, this is the stage where you can afford to be kind of messy and you know, make mistakes and then just come back. And it doesn't have to be a mistake like that. It can simply be that, you know, at this point it looks like, oh, the line is just a bit thick. So you just come in here and you start a little bit away from the line and you just get progressively closer and closer until you have a nice thin line like you want. So there you go. For the lines here, they're a little bit more difficult, but really not all that difficult in that you're just taking, and while you can't use that edge highlight, this is where, you know, again, you come in here and you make a line next to it like this. And then if you have to clean up with Macragge blue later, you can clean up with Macragge blue later. You could actually paint this entire section in blue if you wanted to, because again, I don't know if anyone's going to see it. But, so there you go. So after we're done, it's going to look amazing. And you can see, even though I said I wasn't going to, I totally did add a little bit of Xandry Dust. And the part I said I wasn't going to do was to add a highlight. This part is amazing, so I was just playing around with, because there's a lot of tabard on here, so I wanted to get a look. And this is Xandry Dust up to, I think there's a little bit of white scar on the very hard edge in here. But it's Xandry Dust, Shabby Bone, Screaming Skull, white scar. I used a little bit of Agrax Earthshade, but only in this part here, in the, where am I pointing with my finger? It's huge. In this part here, and just really light, almost like a 50-50 water and Agrax Earthshade, because I want it to be light. These parts are actually just really thinned down and Xandry Dust over and over again. So now, what's amazing about it is, let me show you what it looks like once it gets put together. So you put this piece over here, and hang on, let me adjust for the, there you go. That's, let me take this off. So that is what the robe looks like. All that part that I just took a long time to paint, that's what it looks like when it's all put together. So there you go. You can see that portion of the line. So it was good that I did that part, right? The point is, or not the point is, the nice part is it does give you some good practice. So if you want to try some different methods out, I actually tried stippling, and I felt like it started looking like leather more than anything else. So I went back and just did more of a thin down gradient glazing, wet blending kind of deal. So that is the finish up your. I'm going to finish up my highlights of Dawnstone and Kalgar blue, and then I'm still not going to put this together. I'm going to leave it apart, but you know, we will be that much further, I think. And you can see, because I'm going to make this a long section, I'm not going to do a section on highlighting with Fenrisian gray. I might put a little bit of extra stuff in here, but I did put some down here, and I actually, yes, I did hit Dawnstone in here, a little dot in there, and the sides as well. But I put a little bit of Fenrisian gray in here just to call those highlights out a little bit more so they stand out. It'll probably look better when the cloak is no longer blue, as in you'll be able to see them better. But don't forget to highlight in all these little cracks and crevices, because it'll look good when it's done. And I think I might, oh, it's a tough call, but because I don't want to then ruin any of the blue, once the blue step is done, I may end up using a little bit of matte finish just to cover it all up and make sure it looks good. But that will not be now. So next step, I think I'm going to put on a little bit of white, or I don't know, we'll figure it out. How about I actually do that next step, and then I'll show you where I'm at. So I decided that the next step was going to be Xandry Dust for all of the cloak pieces, And that is because I'm trying to paint this model inside out. And that means that I'm trying to paint, so I did the legs, obviously, and then the next furthest in step is the cloak, because there's a lot of places to hit with it, which are going to be harder if I were to go and paint, obviously, like things like the decorations that go drape directly over the cloak, or any of these etceteras. So this step is a very long step, but I'm going to just go over it very quickly. I've painted most of it already, as you can see, and that's because it's really warm and I don't want to wear a sweatshirt for a very long section. If this heat goes on much longer, I'm going to have to get my own officially sanctioned Roshamjoe Paints t-shirt, which don't exist. So anyways, so as you can see, there's the tabard, or whatever this is, the robe. Inside, there's a piece here on this. Remember, this arm is actually a separate piece. So there's just that one little tiny piece that you need to hit in there. The rest needs to be painted. Also, I can feel already that the Xandry Dust step, and it could just be that, you know, the robes in general are going to fight me. This piece, especially above the arm, everywhere I touch it, and this one as well, every time I touch it, I get a little choked up. No, that's because I was actually choking. But every time I touch it, the paint just wants to rub off. This might be the first time that after I'm done painting this, I might apply a matte varnish over the top of it, just to try and harden that up so that I don't end up rubbing half of the work back off. But I might end up doing just a couple of steps and then, you know, moving on, and then matte varnishing over the top of that before I get to further details. So it would be something like the armor and the robes are done, varnish it, now let's work on the staff, kind of a deal. We'll see what I end up with. As long as I'm not sweating profusely during the entire process, I think I'll be okay. So anyways, we're going to take our thin down Xandry Dust, and we're going to go over all of the parts that we already obviously did, so do that. But now I'm going to paint over the final part of the robe here. And I don't know, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of the sculpt of the top portion. This whole bottom piece, having it actually open in parts, I love. Oop, let me go back and do a little bit right there. This is kind of like my Calibrated green experience, where I do a ton of coats of Xandry Dust, and I still go, oh, I need to do a little more there. Oh, look, here, right here. Need to do a little bit more right there. But the top part of the robe, I'm not a huge fan of, but I like that it's different. You know, if he just looked like your standard librarian, or, you know, any one of the other models, then it would just kind of blend in, aside from the gigantic staff. But, you know, we're using thin down Xandry Dust, and we're going to do multiple thin coats here. And once I get to going around the sides and then up against the armor, since I've already painted that, I'm going to switch out to I'll do that right now. Switch out to a thinner brush that I'll have a little bit more control with. And of course, you can take this apart and paint it better. Now, there's a thumb line, but there's a mold line here. There we go. And I don't know. It says you just kind of got to make up your own line. There's obviously, this comes down, and you want to try to get a nice straight line here. But obviously, there's the armor kind of tucks in underneath this, but then it shoots back that way as well. And I don't know, I'm going to probably end up having to do, I don't know, we'll see. I'll show you what I do, because I haven't decided yet. I want to pull this apart, but I really want to take this sweatshirt back off because it's warm. Anywho, this is also an extremely long process. I may have already said that at the beginning, but I can tell that going between the Xandry Dust, and then we'll highlight with, I'm not going to do a direct shade this time of Agrix Earthshade. I'm going to wait until the very end to do a very thin down version of Agrix Earthshade. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the Xandry Dust, the Shabby Bone, and Screaming Skull. And the Shabby Bone will be most of the layers. All of the flat panels, like here, will be Shabby Bone, and then the corner here is going to be that Screaming Skull, and we're going to do very light coats and try to just blend it in. I tried the stippling process, and I was not a fan of it. So at least not for this, because I'd like it to be a cleaner look. It looked really, really dirty, which would be great, but I don't paint things dirty. So once I actually go out and try to make a weathered looking thing with cloth, I'm all for stippling. But For now, I'm just going to keep it clean. We'll run some over the top, we'll do the edges, and then in these creases, we'll do a very light coat of the Agric Earthshade, and then where it meets the armor panels, we'll do a super thin coat of Agric Earthshade. But let me finish this Xandry Dust first, and then I'll show you what that'll look like. So I have now done most of the Ushabti Bone, and there's a lot of back and forth, similar to the what do you call it, the destroyer swords that we had done, or the whatever they're called, Scorpic Destroyers, the last episode I did. Basically, instead of doing hard lines, I try to do a blend back and forth between the two. We will add another blend later on, or just thin layers. But for this, what I did was I used Ushabti Bone over the Xandry Dust. I did not shade it to begin with, and instead what I did was I did a layer of Ushabti Bone, and in the creases I went back with a super watered down Xandry Dust just to darken up that tone. Now you can see the two here are different, and that is because this line here is really shallow and it's not really a thick crease, whereas this fold is super thick. Now I might come back and do like right here on the very edge to try and just make sure that the darkest portion is way down in. But at this point, I'm happy with how it looks in person. I can't tell how it looks on the camera, but so did that all around. You know, there's a couple other creases here, and then of course the front has two very large ones that go up the entire piece. I haven't done up here yet, but underneath the, or rather in the front, the front tabard here, this piece has just a minuscule amount. Can I zoom in on that? Well, let's see it. Not sure if you can tell or not, but it has a minuscule amount that's right under here. And then don't forget to hit the pieces of the arm. When you pull this off, there's just this little tiny corner again. And actually, let me take the backpack off because it's not needed at the moment. The arm over the top, there will be one little crease there, and then these kind of like two angles right here because there's a ridge in between the two. Now, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just, the last section of that is this front piece, and I'll just show you. It's you go on with the Ushabti Bone, or at least the way I did it. Again, I put this on here, and it's super thin. It doesn't matter if you hit everything right now, including all these creases, because what I'm going to go and do is come back with super thin coats of Xandry Dust to fill those back in once the Ushabti Bone is dry. Or if you're on a coat where it's basically the final coat of Ushabti Bone that you're going to be doing, then I would say go directly into the Xandry Dust, because then you will blend those two colors in together in the crease, and then it will make a slightly lighter tone like this. You can tell in here it's almost like a yellowish color. That's because the Xandry Dust and the Ushabti Bone are actually blended together in that crease. So whereas this is a slight darker because it's a more like it's a deeper crease and a closer together crease, so you would think that less light would get in there. So I used just Xandry Dust in there, whereas this one's a pretty big mix of it. Anyways, it's a lot of back and forth, and you kind of, as you're playing around with it, you can see how it's going. And again, I don't know. I think if I was making a dirtier one, I would use stippling more. But in general, you can see the bottom of the base. But in general, you can kind of see where I was going with it. I think it's coming out really well. Probably the most time I've taken on any of my cloth pieces. And then next, what we'll do after we finish this Ushabti Bone is tell you that also in here, this is like the one portion that I put a little bit of thinned down Agric Earthshade as well. There's Xandry Dust, but the reason that it's so dark in there as well is because it's Agric Earthshade. I can't remember if I said that at the beginning or not, so I thought I'd say it real quick. The next step, and I did it just on this piece so far, is to come back, and you can kind of see like this over here, this whole panel is pure Ushabti Bone. And then again, Xandry Dust here, and you can see while the light is hitting this, it's actually already painted in Screaming Skull, but again, in a super thin glaze-like way, and then blended up towards the ridge and then away from the ridge with the Ushabti Bone. So I'm going to go do all of the what appear to be like, well, his knee guard is here, so, or his shin plate or whatever you call this, is going this way. So I want to make sure that this light that the line that the light is catching is also then just called out by a highlight of a Screaming Skull. Also, for now, basically Chevy won't everywhere. The Xandry Dust was used as a base so that I'm painting up from a yellowish color versus blue. But if you want to layer with the Chevy bone, you can. And then again, just small little highlights of So I went ahead and got really excited, and beyond the Chevy bone, I ended up doing the Screaming Skull step already and didn't film any of it. But let me just tell you, it's very similar to the Chevy bone. I will do a couple parts here where you get your Screaming Skull and you just make a very thin line when you're edge highlighting like that. I like to do also come along all of the bottoms here and that. So the hard lines are obviously going to get that edge highlight just to stand out a little bit. Okay. Second part, when you are doing any of the parts which are in the middle of the Chevy bone, you want a really, really, really thin coat. And you can see here, let me zoom, getting used to trying to do that. So you can see I did a line here, which is a continuation of his knee. So his knee comes up in there, and then now it's underneath the material, but it created this hard edge. Now I don't want a super hard edge. I just want something soft to make it look like the cloth is raised up a little bit. So that's why this is a pretty thin. You can see it's really kind of a thin coat, very tiny controlled one. And you can do multiple thin coats to that, and you can of course always come back and dull it down a little bit with some Chevy bone again. So that is that step complete. I went ahead, and because I was concerned with rubbing the paint off, I ended up doing something I hadn't done before on any of my models, which is I put a matte varnish on the, oh, look at that. Look what I just saw. A matte varnish on, there we go. Get it off there. The model between, what do you call it? What do you call it? Oh my gosh. Anyways, so now all of the blue and all of the robe is under a matte varnish, so that hopefully I won't rub as much of it off as I continue to paint and bump into things. So next step is I'm going to paint this leather belt, which is simple, and then I'll probably end up painting the pouches next, and then we'll go into the head, and then I can glue everything together and go from there. So I'm not painting this in a traditional paint white everywhere and then paint this color everywhere, because obviously haven't even touched the staff yet. So standard. So anyways, so this here is dryad bark in that spot there, as well as I did the sides already, but they're kind of hidden. They're in here. So in that side and in that side. And then of course we'll just take a little bit real quick and we'll zoom in again. And we'll add it to the inside of the buckle. The reason I wanted to do this first is because then it can come with the silver afterwards, and it's a lot easier to paint over and get that silver than it is to try to get the brown back in here. So paint this on, give it some time to dry, come back over. We're going to do Agrex Earthshade over the top of that to dull it down, and then we will highlight with a couple lighter browns, maybe do a fine edge highlight as well. So finish up this belt, and then, or rather, finish up that part of the brown belt, and then we'll move on to, what are the other colors I picked? What are the other colors I picked? Gorthor Brown as a layer, Baneblade Brown as a highlight. Then after that, we continue. All right, so while you were away, I went ahead and did the Agrex Earthshade over the whole thing, and then I came back here with some Gorthor Brown and did highlights on just the edges of the belt, and then on the very center, it may not even show very well, but I did a little bit of Gorthor Brown just right here around the peg that goes through the belt. So that is the belt done in dark leather. Now we might as well use some, what kind of leather? What kind of... Mournfang Brown. Try not to talk with a paintbrush in your mouth. It makes it difficult. So, let's go with a little bit of Mournfang Brown here. Again, thin down because we'll do multiple coats. And we're going to cover, this time, the leather of the pouches. The entire pouch can be done in leather. Watch out for the, obviously, the tabard. I don't want to hit that again. And then, so I'll be more careful underneath. And also the holster. So then this up and down here, use a thin coat. I'm going to maybe do a little stippling on here with my next coat, which is going to be I think Mournfang Brown. Nope, this is Mournfang Brown, isn't it? What did I just say? Rewind the tape. No, I don't actually do that. What is this? Scrag Brown. Scrag Brown is the next brown I'm going to use, which is a little bit lighter. And I may try to do it a little bit stippling, because like I said, it kind of comes out, or at least it started to look like it was coming out more like a leather pattern than it was cloth when I was doing it on the cloth earlier. So either I'm just really bad at stippling, quite possible, or I was using the wrong method, also possible. So anyways, finish up the browns here. We'll add a little bit of Agrex Earthshade to the recesses, not to the entire thing. And then, like I said, we'll come back here and we will stipple a little bit. I'll probably do a little bit of the stippling ahead of time to make sure it looks good, so I don't show you something and then go, I don't like that at all, and change it up. But there we go. There is the layer of Mournfang Brown complete. Almost done to the point where we can assemble this model. And then, like I said, the entire thing here. But I still have the other arm and the... Oh, no, my gosh. So much stuff left to go. But let's get to it. Well, we're already getting to it. Let's get more to... Let's just focus, shall we? All right, so I went ahead and did a little bit of the Bane Blade Brown on the belt section, and while it looks a little bit messy right now, most of the colors that it is messy on have to be cleaned up in a little bit. So I then completed, I did try to stipple a little bit, wasn't happy with how it came out. So the leather is going to remain just a kind of a boring brown, but you know, you've got your, what is it called again? Oh, why can't I not? Mournfang Brown, right? Mournfang Brown as a base color with a little bit of Agrex Earthshade in the recesses, including this line that goes around. It's kind of like a decorative line. And then Scrag Brown really lightly on the edges as an edge highlight, but then also just really, really thin to follow the lines that are kind of like in here. There's also, you know, a little line just on the outside like that of the... of that across the top. So again, edge highlight. Oop, wait, let me put it in focus here. Edge highlight across top, just like this. And if it's too thin right now, that's fine. We can come back and fix it later. But you're going to do that down the side, obviously across the bottom, and finish those out. So with that, the leather is complete. And I think I'm going to move on to the white portions of the armor and then the gold. Okay, so highlights, or rather the just normal edge highlighting and layer and whatnot on the leather is completed. I'm happy with the look, so I'm going to leave it with that, and we'll come back with some gold later on. I have started the next step already, which is to put some Celestra Gray on the shoulder pad, on the Vambrace on this Vambrace on this side here, and of course we're going to paint this one and the front of this chest. But I did the helmet, like I said, I did a little bit differently. I'm going to leave that this portion blue, fully highlight all of the white portions of the helmet, and then see how it looks. And if it looks pretty good, I'm going to leave it. It has my wife's approval at this point as well, and you know, she doesn't steer me wrong very often. So I don't know what to call this. This thing is going to be white though. This piece of plastic that is covered in blue is now going to be covered in an extremely thin white that's going to not work. So I'll have to go and get some more. But let's sop up that puddle. So I'm going to leave that and just let it dry and come back. But let's go with the Vambrace as well. This guy is going to be white, and then you're going to have to come back and do the detail in gold or silver. I'm probably going to use gold because I like gold. It's fun, and it covers really well. So, plus it stands out from white better than silver does. So I'm going to go and complete these steps, and then we are going to move on to the Ulthuan Gray, however it is said. So many weird names. I don't actually know how they're said, and I believe all of these names are in the lore, but I haven't read the lore, and can guarantee if I read the lore, I would go Ulthuan, Abaddon, Caliban. Anyways, point is, I can say it in my head just fine, but it's when I try to say it aloud that becomes a problem. So let's finish up our Celestial Gray step here and move on to the next shade of lighter white that I plan on using. With the Celestial Gray done, we're now going to go and do the Ulthuan Gray. This might take a couple of coats because you want to make sure that this white is nice and strong, as it is one of the defining features that should stand out a lot. Although with this guy in his robe, it's going to look, I don't know, maybe it won't be as exciting as I like to make it out to be. But most of the time when you're doing something like a Fulminator like I am, the white is what makes them be a little bit different than your standard ultramarines. So thin down white, couple of coats, there you go. Same thing with the shoulder pad. Nice and simple. You want to use thin coats. You don't want to go heavy because you're going to create lines that are going to be hard to get rid of later on. So a nice thin coat to start with, and then like 6 or 7 more nice thin coats. So you can probably paint a little thicker than I do, but this is just how I do it. You may also notice, if you've watched any of my previous episodes, and if not, hey, you can catch up. There's a couple of them already out there, and they're videos. But if you have watched, you may notice that these sections are now a little bit shorter. I got a little piece of paint floating in there. That's going to drive me nuts, and that is because I think I'm already past like 30 minutes at this point, and I haven't even started his standard. So there's a lot more to do. So I'm going to try to keep each one of these little sections under 3 minutes if possible, because there's probably another, I don't know, at least another half hour to go, and I just with all of the unplanned rambling on top of the planned rambling, anyways. So there you go. Ulthuan over all the parts we just did in Celestial Gray. So once the Ulthuan Gray was dry, we went ahead and did lots and lots of Retributer Armor. So there's the pieces that are on the Vambrace, the pieces that are in the front, the key and the icon, whatever that is. Skulls here, skulls on the side, skull on the other side, the bottom piece of the holster, as well as skull up here, back piece skull there, skull over here, the Vambrace, the helmet, which now has the gold crown, and of course all around the shoulder. Then followed that up with Reikland Flesh Shade in everywhere again. I didn't do like the outer edges here because that's just going to stay gold, and I'm going to brighten it up probably. But where there's a fold here, I did a little bit of Reikland in there, as well as where the blue meets the armor on the inside of the shoulder panel. I'm going to do that in black. I haven't done the black or the Gnome Oil shade on the white portions yet. I wanted to get all of gold finished, and then we'll do highlights and whatnot in White Scar and Gnome Oil for the shading. So, but the staff, the standard here, I have not done my Reikland Flesh Shade, so I'm going to do that real quick. And it's obviously a very simple process. I just hadn't finished yet, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't painted any of the gold yet, so I might as well show a quick little thing about doing that. So very, very simple. Obviously, we're just going to make sure there's a good amount of coverage on the standard, and that the Reikland Flesh Shade is not pooling too much, I'm going to hold it upside down like this because I actually want it to not only get into the lines where the wings meet each other, but then there's 2 layers here, and I want to make sure that it pools, if it pools at all, near the tops, which, as I'm holding it upside down, is the bottom, but you know what I mean. So go through here, get all of this, get all the front too. There's still more to be painted in gold, but a lot of that detail is actually on the skeleton itself. And I want to make sure that basically, because it's going to be messier to start to paint all of the bone that is on the skeleton, I don't want to have to try and sneak my way around a bunch of finished detail. So that will be done later. But so anyway, like I said, a little too much here, so go in, just tap it, try and get that out. Make sure you get in to all these little ridges. Watch out when you get close to the bottom of the standard, because now you're running into pieces that are already painted. So just make sure you're not hitting any of that. Other than that, you can be pretty messy on this stage. Just don't let it pool, and you know, go back, clean it up, pull it, put it where get it, you know, drag it to where you want it. Kind of an idea. So we'll come back, we'll highlight this, or you know, do some edge highlights, clean this up. But for now, it's going to take probably, you know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes to dry. So we'll give it some time to dry and we'll come back. So the silver lead belcher, that is completed. And also I went ahead and did Gnome oil over that. So now all of the silver is ready. And as you can see, I finally got around to doing the backpack, as I said I would, I promised. And you can probably see that along with the silver on the backpack, all of the highlights have been done, and including those little spikes up top, which I left silver because I thought they looked good in silver. So next up, we are going to, oh, and also, sorry, one last also is the highlights that are on the face, or the shading that's on the shading that is on the helmet, as well as this thin little line around the white in here. So that makes most of that complete. We'll come do some edge highlights later with white scar on the white. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start going around and picking out all of the purity seals or the scrolls that is attached to the purity seals. Now, is the whole thing a purity seal? Like, is the wax and the scroll a purity seal? I don't know. You know what? I honestly don't know. And I guess it's really not that important. The important part is that I get it covered in a decent coat of Xandry Dust, which will probably take two or three coats of my wet palette thin brush, thin down paint, that is. Tiny little itty bitty detailing brush. I recently cleaned this brush off, and for some reason I haven't used anything but like 2 brushes now. So there you go. Save yourself some money. Just get yourself a couple brushes that you're really comfortable with. Second part I'm going to do in Xandry Dust is all of the bone. I'm going to paint the hand. Trust me, I will paint the skeleton up here, but I'm going to paint the hand down here because it's really cool looking, and I don't want to forget it because it's a really tiny detail too. Now, like I said, there is some silver probably and some gold that is going to go onto this hand, but I'm just going to go through and be really messy to start with. So this is silver up here. Let me zoom in so you can see it. So I'm leaving the top here. I already painted that silver. This is going to be either silver or gold, but I kind of left it as a barrier so that I can just go, hee hee, yeah, just get in there. Oh, look, I hit it. It doesn't matter because it's a barrier. So we're going to come in here, be as messy as I want to, just obviously don't go over there, and paint this in. So we're going to go through, I'm going to paint all of the bone details and all of the papers that are on the purity seals. So do that, and then I will come back and we will hit up another portion of, what do you call it? Oh, and one last note in this step, since we were talking about the white here, make sure you go back in and all that Reikland flesh shade. You can see I actually cleaned up some of it, but you can continue, you know, just a little dab will do you. Just in there like that, just to make sure that it's not just one glowy yellowy blob throughout that whole thing. Make sure that it still looks, while you can have the shade in the recesses where they meet, make sure you clean it up a little bit And I keep saying make sure, but, you know, really I'm just talking to myself, as, you know, most of my videos. So lonely. No, anyways. I also, because, you know, what was the last episode I said I was going to change the title to so anyways. This one's going to change to so also. These corners here that are in gold, for some reason, specifically these corners, this stuff around here, and for a while back here is, so the reason I did a matte over the back here, because I was knocking so much of this paint off. But basically, now that this is essentially done, except for maybe some Fenrisian gray highlights and the Runefang steel highlights, like I did a mix of satin and matte varnish on that, and then I did the same thing over this because I don't want to be constantly rubbing this. I don't know when I touch it, but sometimes I manage to hit it and just pull the paint right off. So very thin coat, just to hopefully protect it a little bit from minor wear and tear. Obviously, if I get a little too rough with it, I'm not going to be able to save it. So all that said, Gnome Oil done, white scar incoming, but for now we're going to do some Xandry Dust on all of the bone and parchment. The Xandry Dust was done on the, like I said, the skeleton hand, all of the parchment paper here, and of course, if you did the custom one up here, and then obviously the skeleton of the bone of the skeleton. I did an Agrax Earthshade shading over the bone pieces, so they'd be a little bit darker, and a Seraphim Sepia over the parchment. While we're waiting for all of those things to fully dry so that we don't mess with ourselves, we're going to go ahead and add some Screamer Pink to the wax of the seals. And there's a few of them on here, so, but it's the same. Just tap in a little bit of watered down Screamer Pink. And then we'll come back and we'll shade that with some Nuln Oil to darken it up. The other step we're going to take while we are waiting for all that stuff to dry is on the helm. We're going to do, in the eyes, we're going to do Mephisto Red. Now this is going to take a little more, it's going to just take a little more patience, go slow. So Mephisto Red within the eye here. We're going to shade this later with Agrax Earthshade, and then we'll follow up with highlights, bringing that lens up, making it bright and as if he's actually looking at something. Whereas the Purity Seals are kind of just, well, throw some Nuln Oil in there and then clean it up with some pink horror. That's about it. So these take a little bit longer, but I wanted to finish this up because I do like how this helmet is looking. You know, we're going to get obviously the highlights done on here. The blue highlight will be Kalgar and then Fenrisian, and then the white is the white scar, and then some Liberator Gold and maybe some Runefang Steel. But overall, this is the last portion of the helmet that needs like a base coating, if you will. And you will, because I will. So you have to watch me do it. They don't have to, I guess. But hey, thanks for watching me do it. There's also, there's 100,000 ways probably, if not more, ways to paint the shield that is on his chest. I can't tell if I am painting over things that should be, well, that I know should have remained white, but I can't tell if I'm going far enough into the eye. We'll figure that out later, shall we? We'll have to come back here and probably repaint over that with some white. And because that was red, now it's going to be really hard to do, so let me thin out the water that hit the wrong spot as much as I can while hitting the camera as much as possible. Yeah. That's going to take some cleaning up. Woohoo! All right, so but this piece over here, this little chest piece that we're going to do, I'm going to paint. God, I don't really want to because I want to keep this side white because I want to do the same thing I did on my Sergeant, which is, you know, half and half with the icon over here, but because it has this little cutout, pretty sure the icon won't fit. So I'm thinking maybe I cut it half and half and put the eye cut over here, but because this is here, it probably won't fit. So the, what is it, the art that they have online just kind of has like a generic red square right here. And that looks kind of plain, but you know what? Maybe we'll do it, and then maybe we'll add something to it later. It's got a square here in red. The bottom portion is left blue, so maybe I'll leave a square here in white, and I'll do this bottom portion. No, I'll do the top. Yeah. You gotta figure this stuff out before I film. Tell you what, I'm gonna go away, paint it, and I'll just surprise you guys. So it has been an interesting couple of days, and I haven't been paying attention to the progress that I've been making, and I haven't been really paying attention to anything at all. So it may come to no surprise, as there is a lot more things done to this than there were when I last left off. So things like, I finished the helm because I wanted to stop worrying about it. This I went with the gold. So the Retributer Armor with the Recklin shade over it, and then Liberator Gold, as well as some Stormhost Silver on the very high edges. I did the same thing to the top here. These ones have that transition between the gold all the way to light. I did Liberator Gold on all of these edges. First I cleaned up with some Retributer Armor on the feathers and the flat portions, and then I went back with some Liberator Gold and attempted to edge highlight, and I don't see it. I don't know if it's there or not, but it doesn't look like it showed up, and Liberator Gold is not a very good highlight in the first place, so I'm just gonna leave it and pretend it's there. Like, let me get a little bit right now and see if I can do just a very fine line and see if it shows up somewhere like right. Let me get it right on these feathers right here. Like when I hold it at this angle, I can actually see the lines, and you can see it too on the camera right there. I didn't really hit any of those three, but like down here, you know, I tried to get this color to sit on here, and it just will not do it, and I don't know why. But you know what? I'm okay with that, because there's so much detail on this. If that's the one thing I can't get going for me, I'm going to leave it at that. So another thing that I finished was I did like a checkerboarding of the chest piece here in white and blue. I ended up putting the red over here because I'm going to try to squeeze half of a decal over here for when I'm done. I came in with, again, Liberator Gold. See, like down here, Liberator Gold actually shows up and shines quite nicely. So for all the gold all around the model, I did Liberator Gold on the as edge highlights, and put a little bit of Runefang steel on all of the silver portions, just to make them shine a bit more. Dotted all the eyes, aka the rivets, especially on the backpack. There's a bunch of rivets all over the place, and you see them better if maybe I'll zoom in. There you go. You can see them all there. They're looking good. They're happy. Everyone's fine, having a good time. I had forgotten to paint the pistol grip, as I always do, so I went back and finished that up. So mainly the last portion that I have to go back and do in order to call this thing close enough to done to where I'm happy with it is, you know, I'm going to add a little bit of highlight real quick in the form of pink horror, just on the, you know, little bit of skull bits here. And that was not a skull bit. That was like the one part I didn't want to get it, but you know, that's how I roll. So anyways, like this, for all of the wax of the purity seals, just go around, add a little bit of highlight to them. So that's going to be one of the highlights that needs to be done. There's a total of 2, 4, 6, 7, 8-ish of them. So we'll do that. And the other thing I want to do is, obviously the skeleton is far too dark still. So the bone pieces are now going to get some of the Ushabti bone. So, sorry, real quick, let me do this. So we're doing the scrolls in Ushabti bone, and it's going to be a layer over the top. There's a couple of really fine recesses, like right here. There's actually a recess, and there's a couple lines across the middle. Overall, I'm just going to do, you know, a light, just a layer over the whole thing, probably, unless there's a really hard edge. Like in here, I'm not going to fill the gap between the two scrolls. It'll just be a layer over the top, and then almost just an outline of there. But lightening these up with some Ushabti bone so that they look more like paper and less just like, I don't know, sandbags. But also we will then go and do our best to highlight just the bone pieces of, are we even, yes we are, okay, of the hand. So I'm going to try and not use so much paint that it runs into the cracks, because I don't feel like trying to fix it. You know, again, this is you can be sloppy before. This is where you actually want to try to be careful. I'm knocking the thing off of. Did anyone else see that? That would have been great. Stay on there. This is where you want to be, you know, concentrating and not doing things like knocking your model off. So we're going to go through, highlight all of the bones, and then obviously up on the standard, same thing. And if you can avoid the recesses, do so. You know, take a thin coat, make sure it's thin and not too thick, so that you're not creating new lines on the bone that didn't exist there in the first place. If that makes any sense whatsoever. Just, you know, kind of like we did with the robes. I'm not going to want to, you know, have to fix a bunch of stuff later, or end up with those really thick lines in between the two. So there you go. So there, we're going to go through, paint all of the bone of the skeleton, and the Ushabti bone, and all of the scrolls as well. I haven't figured out. I'm probably going to do, I don't want them to look the same, but they're done in the same way, and there's so much of them close together. I don't know. I try to use a Seraphim sepia to make a big difference, but we'll see what happens. So anyway, hopefully that got me caught up enough on where we're at. Oh, let me continue with the helmet. Let me go back. So I did the gold on the helmet, and then the eyes are Mephiston Red, Evil Sun Scarlet, Fire Dragon Bright, and Uriel Yellow, in that order, with a little bit of Agric Earthshade around the outsides, just to give them a kind of, you know, glowy effect from further away. And then, of course, white scar over all the white portions of the helmet, and some Kalgar blue, and really light Fenirzian gray, more on the underside of the harder edge of the eyes. So that is the helmet completed. So that one's done. I mean, we're getting close to being overall done. It's just there's so much parchment and so much bone left to be done. It's almost like a whole another model has to be done. And I know I'm already into an hour about, and I want to make sure that I finish this. So I guess it did turn out okay. The paper looks more like paper and scrolls than it does just like an extension of the cloth of the robe. So I'm happy with that. I think this piece is now officially done, aside from the basing, but I can do that whenever I feel like. Let me show you what it looks like on the arm piece, which is also, I think, again came out pretty good. Oops, shaky hand. So that's, you got the pink of the wax, and obviously the scroll's complete. Now this is where we're heading next, is the bone. I've finished this hand with Ushabti bone, and then white scar on top, or not white scar, screaming skull on top, and went back and dabbed in a little bit of the silver and gold and a little red ruby for his ring, just to make it look fancy. Same thing on the back. So that too, I think this piece is officially done as well. The other place that had all the scroll work is the here. So again, the scrolls were done with the layer of Ushabti bone, and using Pallid Witch flesh to do the edge highlighting and any hard edges that are raised in the center. Actually, it shows off better on this one, I think. Let's see if I can get this zoomed in. Right about, like I was pointing at the camera, which you couldn't see, right about here. Same thing with how the cloth, you get this line just to make it a raised edge in the cloth. That line continues on this side, same deal. You still have that knee pad that's coming over the top here. So on these, prior to putting the brown over the top, I had a little bit of Pallid Witch flesh highlighting that curve. The brown that's on top is just a really thin down dryad bark on the finest tip. And if you're looking to make the writing more realistic, my method is at least to drink a lot of energy drinks and then try to hold a steady hand, and you end up just, you know, like I'll just See that right there? Perfect. So anyways, we're going to go through now and we will paint the bone of the skeleton here. So that should be, I think, the last part. So we already started on a couple, or we started on the legs, thin coats of shabby bone. So one coat and now two coats. And then what we will do is, and I probably, again, I'm not going to film this entire thing because we are so far into this episode that I want to make sure. No, if you made it this far, you'll probably be willing to watch a few more minutes, but I'll spare you that anyway, and I'll just do the highlights now. So you got, this is a Screaming Skull, and you'll come along here where like the crack in the bone is, and you know, I'm gonna add some of that, maybe even draw it a little bit up the leg, like that. See if that shows up on camera at all. It kind of does. Basically, you're just gonna come in here and hit all the edges. I can hit these edges now, and then after later. So like, you got this. This is one of the hard lines. Maybe try to go in here, and this is going to be silver, so I got to repaint that. Maybe try to do a little bit of the spine here in this, but first you're going to want to do, or I'm going to want to do the shabby bone on everything but the shaded areas. Then once all of the bone is done, similar to the hand, I'm going to come back in here and all of these bracelets, armlets, trinkets, etc. Hit up these. This one is cloth or rope, so I'll probably just do this in a brown. But like the metal, the ones that are metal, I'm going to hit up with corresponding metal. Now, I would love to say that I'm going to do a Terminator eye, as far as like, T2 Judgment Day style, but I think instead I'm going to just dot this with a little bit of Eshin Gray, my favorite highlight, and leave it at that, because he is no longer alive. So why would his eye be what do you call it? Why would his eye be glowing if he's dead? So maybe I'll even try to do like a lens type of like a lens, not a lens flare, but what do you call it? Just like the reflection. Get an incredibly small amount of white scar and just tap the top. Like that. That do too much? I can't tell. Let's zoom out to where I would actually be looking at it. Yeah, that did too much, but I'll try to cover some of that up. Basically making it look like it's a glass eye that is now turned off. That's what I'm going for. All right, paint the bone, fix up the metals, and wow, after that, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna base it, and then we'll just show you what it looks like complete. Sound good? Oh, one last thing, because you won't see it once I assemble it. I went ahead and did hazard striping, because why not, on this right here. And you'll never see it, but it'll be there, and it'll be funny if by some random happenstance you manage to see that. Let me clean up this a little bit, just make it a little brighter, because again, we want to make sure that the details you can't see are the best ones. All right, let's move along. Should be done now, I think. Maybe in an hour. We'll see. So there you have my take on the Bladeguard Ancient. A very, very satisfying model to paint, much more than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be one of my least favorite models to paint out of this box, and so far I really haven't had one that I didn't enjoy. The lot of detail on this one. Got to play around with some new shading. I mean, I've done glazing before, but had never used that on the robes like that. So I'm excited for that, especially because we still have all of the other Bladeguard, and gosh, we got the Judicar and the Captain and Chaplain, all these other guys who have cloth on them. So hopefully I'll be able to take what I did here, move it onto them. Next up, I think we're still due for some more Primaris to even out the balance of the shelf we got that back there. But if you enjoyed what you saw here, thanks for sticking with me. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, follow on Instagram, follow on Reddit, follow wherever. Again, just, So long as you're enjoying the content, I'm interested in hearing from you. If you have any suggestions, let me know. If you have any, anything you want to see specifically, let me know and I'll try to make that happen. Until next time, thank you for tuning in and have a good one. I don't care how cute you are, you can't stay here. Okay, but just until the weekend's over.